Hi, welcome everyone. We're happy that you are all here today and joining us for an ACEEE workshop on reaching rental property owners to advance energy efficiency. So we're going to get started. Awesome. So for those who may be joining us for the first time, we are the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy. We are a national nonprofit research organization. At our organization, we have different teams working on different policies with the ultimate goal to reduce energy waste. So we have teams across working with local governments, state governments, utilities, industry, companies, etc. So before we start, I do want to go over a few housekeeping announcements. We are recording this webinar to make it available to all registrants within a few business days. So we will also provide all of the slide decks that you see presented here as well. We will be taking questions during the webinar, so feel free to put your questions after or during the speaker's presentation using the chat option. And one of our colleagues here, one of the facilitators here will sort of take note of those questions and relay that to our presenters as well. And then I think that's it. And so for today's meeting or webinar, we are joined by three facilitators, including myself. So my name is Roxana Ayala. I am a senior research analyst at ACEEE with the local policy team, and I mostly conduct research, writing, and technical support on local level energy efficiency policies, specifically looking at working with local governments and utilities to really scale initiatives that enforce energy affordability and workforce development. I'm going to pass it to two of my other colleagues who are here facilitating with me. So I'm going to pass it on to Stefan to introduce themselves.
Hi there, everyone. If I haven't met you before, my name is Stefan Samaripas. I'm Senior Manager on ACEE's local policy team. I'm lead author of City Clean Energy Scorecard. I also do a ton of research and technical assistance support focused on rental properties, multifamily properties, and excited to be here.
And then my colleague, Krista.
Hey y'all, my name is Krista Lee. I'm a program assistant at ACEEE. I also support and I also do support, play a supporting role in supporting all kinds of technical assistance across the team, and I'm just looking forward to learning more about the project.
Great. And so for today's presentation or webinar, we are joined by two wonderful guest speakers who will introduce themselves later in the presentation or when the presentation comes. But for now, I do want to mention we will be joined with Lauren, who is with the National League of Cities, and then Joe, who is with the City of Ann Arbor. And again, they'll introduce themselves at the start of their presentation. All right, so moving along, I'd like to share an overview of what you should expect to learn and do in today's webinar. Once I'm sort of wrapped up with this introduction portion of the agenda, you'll hear from two presentations that will highlight key resources with guidance on how to reach property owners through outreach and marketing strategies. And then we'll break out to a breakout session, giving you the opportunity to engage with others on this call and also a chance to ask specific questions to facilitators on the best way to reach property owners, depending on the topic related to this sort of engagement. And then lastly, we'll close with a presentation which will highlight a program model that has had success with reaching property owners. All right, so now I'd like to take a moment and ask the audience to introduce themselves in the chat. I ask that you please enter your name, the organization you work for or represent, and your response to our question. And that is, in what ways might you use or build from the information shared to date in our work? And feel free to add this information as we move along with the presentation. All righty. So I'll be kicking off our webinar presentations and sharing with you a series of key resources that ACEEE has found helpful in sort of demonstrating guidance and strategies for really engaging property owners. And so to start, I want to provide some context on the inspiration for this webinar. In 2021, ACEEE created the Energy Equity for Renters initiative. We heard from local governments and community organizations that they were experiencing challenges with improving energy efficiency, saving energy, and really reducing energy bills in rental housing. As we know, research has shown how critical it is to increase energy efficiency among rental homes. So for example, even though rental homes are often small, they still consume more than 15% of energy per square foot. And then we also know through research that renters also often tend to have high energy burdens, meaning that they're spending a substantial amount of their income on energy bills. But yet for so many of these renters, they have often found it difficult to make energy improvements. And in some instances, they're even often prohibited from doing so. So with our initiative, we have looked at different aspects of the rental housing and how we can approach these aspects to really help scale energy efficiency within the sector. And we recognize the importance of, or the important role that property owners play in sort of in approving and investing in these energy saving improvements in the rental housing sector. So to sort of understand and identify the approaches to reaching rental property owners, ACEEE conducted a literature review of available resources with guidance on how to effectively market and outreach to property owners. And this table really highlights several of the key strategies that we found. We'll be taking a look at the first three resources more in depth during this webinar. But I do encourage folks to return to this slide after the webinar and check out the other two resources that we won't be mentioning here, but they're definitely worth giving it a read. But like I said, three of the top three resources we'll sort of be looking into more in detail. So the first resource I'd like to discuss was developed by Xcel Energy through an initiative known as Partners in Energy. And Partners in Energy was really designed to help communities in Colorado and Minnesota to develop and implement an energy plan. So through this sort of initiative, communities often receive free support to set them up, again, to really implement an energy plan through receiving support from Xcel Energy by receiving data analysis, receiving help to host educational and outreach events, and really helping them think through their community engagement. So as part of the offerings as well, Partners in Energy developed a series of toolkits to really help communities think through how they can effectively implement strategies that are often identified in their energy action plan. And some of these strategies that were brought to the attention was, how can we best engage different targeted audience, which would include property owners. Okay. And so one of the tools that was developed through this initiative focused on how to really increase energy savings in residential buildings with 1 of 4 dwelling units. So the toolkit really guides communities through a step-by-step instruction on how to engage property owners as well as other tenants and property management staff. But for the purposes of this webinar, we'll be focusing on highlighting the strategies on how to engage property owners. So again, the goal of the toolkit was to help communities really encourage property owners to take action on energy efficiency. So the toolkit really guides readers through a 5-step approach for accomplishing these goals. As shown here in the slide, we can see the 5 different steps, with the process starting with identifying your targeted audience all the way to sort of how to track success. And for the purpose of this webinar, we won't be discussing too much of step 1 since our targeted audience here is primarily focused on property owners. So the next slide has a list of the different actions provided for each step that local governments, utilities, or just folks interested in really targeting property owners can consider as they develop their step-by-step action plan for reaching property owners. And so we have, for example, when considering like step 3, which is to develop a strategy to conduct outreach to property owners to make upgrades, the toolkit suggests a few actions, which would include using the city's existing channels that they have used to regularly have contact with property owners, and really just add information about a program or offering that you wish property owners were informed about. And so again, with the interest of time, I would encourage folks to come back to the slide and really go through some of these actions per steps and sort of identify where you are in your process and how can you sort of apply some of these actions listed here into your development strategy. And so the toolkit also includes additional lists to templates that communities can replicate or use as inspiration when developing their material. So for example, the image shown here is a template of an outreach flyer that communicates the value of energy efficiency upgrades to to property owners. So the flyer really contains information of the services available to property owners. It gives them tips or guidance on sort of the small or big actions that they can take to really improve or to help reduce operational costs, improve a property's appeal, and really ensure that they ensure tenant satisfaction. So again, when browsing through the toolkit, you can sort of look through some of these resources and see how this might apply to some of the outreach material that you may be interested in creating when conducting sort of the outreach or marketing approach for property owners. All right. So ACEEE also developed a toolkit, the Energy Equity for Renters toolkit, in response to cities' requests to learn more about policies and programs that would essentially help reduce greenhouse gas emissions and energy costs while still preserving energy affordability. And so the toolkit offers several strategies and guidance on how to sort of integrate energy efficiency and affordable housing policies with, and also provides sort of like case studies from across the country that readers can sort of learn from and adapt to their work as to the extent possible. So the toolkit has 4 different sections as noted here, but for the purpose of this webinar, we'll mostly be focused on the 3rd section, which really provides guidance on how to conduct energy efficiency marketing and educational campaigns aimed at property owners and other individuals like renters and rental property staff. But again, since the focus here is mostly on property owners, we'll sort of focus on that for this webinar. Okay, so as I mentioned, the section 4 of the toolkit, section 3 of the toolkit really contains guidance on how to effectively reach property owners. And here we see 4 different strategies that we have found successful in reaching property owners. So from our research and collaboration with local governments and CBOs, we learned that the effective strategies for engagement and marketing and outreach would include engaging with local associations, simplifying programs and marketing, targeting energy efficiency upgrades while other building improvements are occurring, and then presenting case studies of program success to really gain the appeal and interest of property owners. And the toolkit itself provides a little bit more detail on each strategy, but as you can always refer back to the slide to sort of get a description of how sort of this strategy is characterized in real life. But I will, for the purposes of the webinar, I'll sort of go over the 3rd strategy, which, the 2nd strategy, which is simplifying programs and marketing. So the way that this sort of strategy shows up in real life applications that we've seen it show up is through this program model known as one-stop shops. So the model is really meant to simplify and ease the complexity of having to navigate the landscape of energy efficiency programs. And what one model's shops do well is that they provide coordination across different available energy efficiency services through one single point contact that property owners can deal with that one single point of contact to help them sort of access, apply, and then participate throughout the program. And these programs really helped, again, to really simplify the process for property owners. We know that oftentimes they have limited time or don't always, or may not be aware of the full scope of the projects or excuse me, services that they might be eligible for. So it really creates this like really positive engagement experience for property owners to participate in programs. And you know, and according to the image here or the flyer here, according to Energy Efficiency 4, one-stop shops models do often lead to a higher percentage of uptake when compared to other program models that go through the traditional approach. So the toolkit includes 2 case studies on one-stop shop models. The first is Dane County's Energy Efficiency Program, which is a one-stop shop for property owners of small to medium-sized rental properties. And what this program does is helps the small to medium-sized rental properties, the property owners, access several services, one of which includes energy efficiency upgrades and improvements. And so the property owner will sort of start the process at this one stop with the with the contact at the one-stop shop model and they really, the way that this started is by providing the property owner with a free energy assessment. And then once that's completed, they work with the property owners to then assess and develop a step-by-step 3-year implementation plan for any of the suggested projects that the energy efficiency staff would suggest the property owner based on the energy assessment. So again, it really streamlines the process by giving them a step-by-step action plan and really helping them throughout every step of the way of really creating a plan to get them to the start of the project to completion of the project. And then the second project here is from the city of the second example, excuse me, is the Fort Collins Energy Efficiency Work Neighborhood, which ran as a pilot that really, again, also had a goal to increase rates of participation for this particular service, achieve higher energy savings, and really, again, make the upgrade process as simple as possible for homeowners. And so similar to the efficiency navigator, a lot of the property owners homeowners started the process through receiving an assessment of their building property and working with a staff with efficiency work neighborhoods to then help them identify the process by which to identify package deals for them to choose from in terms of what are some of the upgrades that so essentially it was just like different package options that they would receive from this pilot with different services, and the homeowner would then choose from these packages based on their needs, and then the efficiency works neighborhood would then work to identify and contract the contractors to complete the work. So it sort of took that ease from the homeowners as well, from having to deal with finding contractors or finding reliable contractors. So it really streamlined the process for them as well, making it a little bit easier to navigate sort of the complex technical work of scope, or finding contractors, or even identify what are sort of the services that they needed. Yeah. And again, I want to show this resource, the table here again, to remind folks of sort of the key resources that we have found. There's plenty of others out there, but these are some of the ones that we found to have really strong guidance and strategies. And our next presenter will present on the third toolkit here, the landlord engagement toolkit. So we'll hear from her in a bit about this toolkit more in detail. So if you have any questions about what was presented in this presentation, feel free to contact us at the email shown here in the screen. So yeah, and I'll open it up to take a few questions if anyone has any, and then I'll invite my colleague Stefan to also join me for Q&A. So are there any questions? Krista, let me know if there was any in the chat that we should be aware of, or folks want to come off mute. That's also fine.
Well, I mean, just I guess while people are maybe putting their questions in the chat, I can mention just I made a couple points in the chat to respond to some questions. So I did include some links to the two resources that Roxana went through, and then also just to clarify again, like the slides will be available. So if you didn't have a chance to look at everything on one particular slide, you should have an opportunity to go back. Take a look.
Great. And I see someone from the city of Madison here, potentially a part of the efficiency navigator. So that's awesome to see in the chat. Okay. I guess I'm seeing a few questions in the chat, then maybe I can. Yeah, so all the slides will be emailed to everyone who has registered. And so maybe I can go from the order that I'm seeing them, but if I miss your question, please feel free to come off mute and ask a question. So there's a question from Catherine who is saying, we're a nonprofit providing low income folks with free energy efficient upgrades, but we don't want to provide that which a landlord should which a landlord should replace a appliance. Any idea on what we could spend our funds on for one to 4 unit buildings? Catherine, would you mind just clarifying, like, what do you mean by but we don't want to provide that which a landlord should? Do you mean like what they're required by law to provide, or? Or I don't know, Stefan, if you have any immediate reactions to the question. I mean,
okay, this is Catherine. So we're a nonprofit, and we received funds from the EPA to provide energy efficiency upgrades. So we want to help renters, but we do not want to pay for repairs or upgrades that a landlord should be providing their tenants. Are there any ideas on energy efficiency upgrades or repairs that we could do?
I mean, I think that, what the way that this is often handled, and it depends on where you are in terms of the state that you're in or the municipality.
DC.
And DC. Yeah, so without knowing right off the exact requirements in the district, I will say that I think most people tend to approach it, most programs I've seen tend to approach it by incentivizing whatever sort of the extra cost would be to increase to a more efficient, so your example is like refrigerators, right? So if the refrigerator breaks down, maybe under the code, the landlord has to come in and replace it. But they might have the option of doing so by just picking the cheapest, most least efficient refrigerator out there. So part of some programs and how they approach that is thinking about, okay, well, what is the incentive we can provide so that they're moving a step up, right? And they're still doing the replacement that they need to do. And so that way you're not sort of like covering just whatever the most basic level replacement would be. That's what I've tended to see.
Great, thank you.
Yep. And then I see a question in the chat as well. If we have any protections that you are providing for renters as you are giving them this level of support. So our energy equity for renters toolkit, I believe, is section 2 actually describes actions for some of the projections like displacement. I don't know them in detail as my colleague worked on that toolkit, but I would suggest maybe starting there if you're interested to learn maybe some of the actions of what we suggest would be good for preventing displacement. And I believe there might be a few examples from cities of how they've approached this. So I don't know, Stefan, if you are more familiar with the section 2 than I am, but
Yeah, I mean, I think for right now, I think what you're suggesting probably makes sense, right? It's like check it out. There's a lot in there that covers all sorts of different options, avenues. I think, ultimately the solution to designing a program that both is attractive to owners and also protects residents. You have to keep in mind that like there will need to be probably a very specific local solution that takes into consideration kind of the housing laws that are in place, what you can take advantage of, what programs are already out there and you can leverage. So I would suggest starting with that, and we'll probably hopefully have some other webinars like this on this exact sort of topic. So stay tuned. We can get into more discussion about that or follow up over email.
Yep. And then I know we have a few minutes still for questions, so looking through the chat here. But if anyone at any point wants to come off mute, feel free to do so. So the toolkits that we have highlighted, so the question is, do the toolkits include barrier remediation support? As it feels, I guess their comment is mostly like, housing stocks in certain cities, they're not always out of conditions that would allow for EE projects. So the toolkits itself are mostly engaged towards sort of these strategies for engagement of property owners. But at ACEEE, we do have resources such as reports and briefs that speak to this issue of how to approach barriers to remediation support, because we do know that that is a common barrier often for communities that have often been like historically disinvested as well, and can be a barrier for energy efficiency applicability or uptake. So happy to connect off or in email as well and share those resources with you as well, and maybe try to pull some examples of those cases. Okay. We're 1 minute from moving on to our next activity. So does anyone have one last question? I can continue to respond in the chat as well, but just want to give folks an opportunity if anyone had
I have a question. This is April Patterson from Baltimore, Maryland. Hello. I just wanted to find out, is there any guidance in the toolkits to address like disgruntled renters? Like I've been in situations where I have tried to encourage the renter to um get some energy efficiency upgrades, but they're so disgruntled with the landlord that they won't even consider it. So is there anything that can help us guide them through the process so that they're more inclined to talk to their landlord about getting energy efficiency upgrades? So we just find that we're getting stalled right at the beginning because there's some conflict, or there's things where the renter is unhappy with their landlord overall.
Yeah, so both of the toolkits do speak to engaging renters. We didn't necessarily speak about that here just because of the focus of the property owners. So I can follow up with you, April, maybe to see if we can pull something from those toolkits that might be relevant to you. But also we have two other speakers after me, so maybe either Lauren or Joel can maybe speak to this effect during Q&A as well. But Stefan, I saw you come off mute. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, just real
I
quick,
just
and
want to say thank you. Oh, that's not me. Okay, sorry.
So I was just going to say real quick, I do think that like having um, measures, energy efficiency measures that are available that you sort of think out ahead of time that a renter can add in themselves, right? These aren't usually like deep energy saving measures, but making sure they've got energy efficient light bulbs, removable weather stripping might be an option. Pipe wrap on, sort of like water heating equipment. These are all sort of things that might make a difference for their own energy bills, even in a modest way, and it introduces them to sort of, what to thinking about energy efficiency. So I would say that, just as a first step, that might be something to think about. And then of course, there's other things that we can get into, that talked more about that landlord, resident connection. So, but that's what I'll say for now, because I know we got to move on.
Thank you. I appreciate you all.
Thank you, April, for the question. Alrighty. So now we'll be moving on to the next portion of our agenda, which is
Excuse me, I had one question that I posted in the chat.
okay.
Is
Well, yeah, we'll try to respond to you in the chat. Just with the interest of time, we do have
Thank
to move
you.
on, but thank you for elevating that. And so now we'll move on to our second speaker of today. So I want to bring back or introduce or call on Lauren to come on.
Yeah, thank you. Excited to be here today. My name is Lauren Lowry, and I'm the Director of Housing and Community Development at National League of Cities. I'm here to talk about our landlord engagement toolkit that we put out a couple of years ago. Next slide. Before getting into the toolkit, I just want to talk a little bit about National League of Cities. If you are not familiar with National League of Cities, we are the voice of 19,000 cities, towns, and villages. And our mission is to advocate for and protect the interests of cities by influencing federal policy, strengthening local leadership, and driving innovative solution. At National League of City, I lead a team that is focused on housing and community development. Next slide. And our work really sits at strengthening local leadership as well as driving innovative solutions. Most particularly, we are a one-stop shop as it relates to housing. We focus on the topics of housing supply, homelessness, housing stability, and community development. And we provide a variety of resources to our local leaders, from our Housing Supply Accelerator Playbook that talks about accelerating housing supply through the production, preservation, and improvement of supply, to our guide on homelessness and eviction prevention. But I didn't come here to talk about that today, but I'm here to talk about the Landlord Engagement Toolkit. Next slide. Perfect. The toolkit, to give a bit of background, the toolkit came out of our extensive work during the height of COVID-19, where we noticed cities were struggling with building or maintaining relationships with landlords. From our eviction prevention cohort, we then launched our Landlord Engagement Lab. And one of the things I did not want to happen once the Landlord Engagement Lab ended was to walk away from the wealth of knowledge that was talked about over the course of 12 months. And so one of the things that me and my team did was created this series of briefs that really digs into how to build, refine, and strengthen relationships with landlords. Often, there are programs that are focused on renters, but we wanted to kind of pivot. And although this toolkit is focused on eviction prevention, it could be applied to your work. And so In the toolkit, we have briefs that talks about developing a landlord engagement strategy. It talks about how do you identify landlords to build relationship and support. We have briefs around incentivizing landlords, a brief on communicating with landlords, and a brief on how to evaluate your policies and programs. Next slide. And so the features of our landlord engagement toolkit includes with each brief, you kind of get background why it's important to develop a strategy or why it's important to use data to identify landlords or why it's important to communicate. And so we wanted to kind of provide the context as to why these strategies are important. And then what we did was provide step-by-step guidance. So we just didn't want to have information on why this is important, but we also wanted to make sure that this information was applied. And so wanting city governments to kind of walk through how do you do this step by step, and it's very practical. We also provide recommendations. So as you are reading the guidance, you hear about recommendations, how to take actions, and also understanding that each locality is different. Each locality have a variety of landlords, so taking that into consideration. And then we also provided case studies of cities big and small who are actually implementing what we're suggesting in the recommendations and the steps as well. Next slide. And so I want to talk about a couple of briefs that may be of interest to each of y'all. One is developing a landlord engagement strategy. Again, most programs that are out there are usually focused on the renter. And so we wanted to, like I said before, pivot and focus on the landlord because we know that to in this case, solve for housing instability, we knew that the landlord had to play a critical role to ensure that our end goal was met. So when developing a strategy before jumping in, what you need to do is zoom out and to see what is available, ask questions like what strategy is currently in place? Is there a strategy in place? Can the strategy be refined? Who's responsible for the strategy? And gathering all that information. So when you are developing a strategy, you're not duplicating work. You could also be filling in gaps that are needed. Additionally, the strategy should focus on the people that is serving. So the strategy should focus on the landlord. They are a very critical part of success of your program. And so when designing this strategy, it's going to be important that the landlord is a part of it, even if it's giving feedback about your strategy. So thinking about maybe creating a focus group to get feedback from your end user that will ultimately be using your program is going to be critical because we all want successful programs, and the success is going to rely on our expectations too high? Are they realistic? Is this actually serving a purpose? Also being realistic with goals and timelines. Engaging with landlords take time. It does not happen overnight, and you have to build trust. And so when really thinking about your strategy, it's going to be important going back to how are landlords on the front end in ensuring that your strategy is successful. Next slide. Also, when it comes to identifying landlords to build relationships and support, particularly in city government, there are countless office or departments or agencies that may be touching on or in contact with landlords or housing providers, it's important to gather that data and also kind of take into consideration what are the different types of ways that these departments are contacting landlords, and are they effective as well? Because when you can do this, you can more than likely create a coordination with these departments to have a more effective approach to contacting landlords instead of landlords being contacted by the housing department or the community service board or public works. Like, how is this being done seamlessly? And if you don't have the data in the department, how about creating a survey to kind of get a pulse on um, what landlords are looking for or wanting to engage or who you're trying to talk to? But also remember, data cannot be a substitute for engagement and relationship building. It should serve a purpose and it should bolster engagement. And I think also what's important is leveraging a shared interest. What is in it for the landlord, right? What are the common interests and how will it benefit their property in the long run, as well as serve their tenants or renters? And again, continue to emphasizing authentic community engagement. Having worked with landlords before in cities, it takes a while to build their trust. But once you have their trust due to authentic community engagement, you have a collaborator who would like to serve their renters. Next slide. Communicating with landlords. One of the things when communicating with landlords, there's just not one way to communicate with landlords. Also, it's going to be important to coordinate across city agencies and departments. Again, landlords may be getting information from a number of city agencies. And so it's going to be important to kind of streamline that communication so that landlords have one place where they're getting information about the programs and services that could benefit them and their renter, but also making it easy for the landlord to reach out, hopefully, to one person or one coordinator who can triage that information. Also, going to places landlords are at. That means showing up at local landlord associations, at least, starting there, hopefully gaining their trust to present. Consider going to real estate agents or realtor meetings as well because their clients are landlords or chamber of commerce. So really getting out in the community to really talk to these landlords, showing up at community events as well because landlords are as invested in their neighborhoods as well. Also, leveraging and testing out different forms of communication. Social media will go but so far, and that may not be the main form of communication with landlords or housing providers. Also, considering paper outreach, it may be considered a thing of the Stone Age, but again, when I was on the ground, the most effective way that I reach landlords is providing a very clear, simple message on postcards to get them to come out to talk about how we could help them with their properties. And then also having a website geared towards landlords where all the information about services that are available at the city or at your community-based organization in one spot. And then also consider community outreach. Again, getting out there, going to community events, going to places that landlords will show up. And with that, I think that's my last slide. I'll see what questions there are. And also, I'll drop in the chat the Landlord Engagement Toolkit. that can be found at noc.org. And again, like I said, it can be applied to the work that you are doing.
Great. Thank you so much, Lauren, for your presentation and for sharing your resources. Uh, is there anyone who would like to come off mute to ask Lauren any questions about the toolkit that she shared or anything that she spoke to in her presentation? Also, keep an eye on the chat, but if folks want to come off mute, I know there's discussions happening in the chat, so we don't want to miss anyone. So please.
Yeah, and I'm dropping in the chat a couple of city programs that focus on landlord engagement. One is Philly Landlord Gateway. They realized that landlords were going to multiple city departments, and so they consolidated their program to have a one-stop shop as to where landlords can interact with different services and benefits. I also highlighted Seattle, Washington, as to how they have their page created where landlords can go and tap in as well.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. Does anyone want to come off mute or have any questions for Lauren?
Looks like Eric has a question.
Oh, thank you. I tried to go off mute before and it didn't allow, so I was just bringing that attention. Thank you so much for your presentation. My question, it's maybe like two quick ones. It's one from like a spectrum of time. What would you say is the relationship building piece with the landlord engagement? And then secondly, did you find in your efforts that there was a feedback loop or like where they were coming to you for more information or support requests, or was it more of just you provided the information and they just run with it, or a combination?
Yeah. I think with each landlord, it's going to take time. I will say one of the things I consider first is how did I want to go about building relationships with landlords. It was either showing up at their monthly events and being invited to speak, and this happened on a number of occasions. It wasn't just I presented one time and they were sold to the idea. It was a matter of come back, answering their questions, getting buy-in of the program and the types of incentives. So the program that I did was in the city of Norfolk, and to get them to buy into the program, I did have to have incentives that were attracted to them in terms of being a part of that program. Once we built that trust, then I had landlords who were invested in buying into it. We also created like a landlord advisory group or a commission to get feedback from them. So bringing them into the process of structuring programs, when thinking about classes, just getting them very much involved so that they could see themselves in it. And it was a wonderful loop in terms of then we were able to create an ambassador program where they were able to speak for us and bring along their friends who were also landlords. And then the feedback loop is again having that advisory group, wanting them to buy into it because they could talk more effectively to their counterparts than I could at the city, because they saw value in the incentives, they saw value in being a part of the program, and they saw value in how it could benefit their property and as well as future renters. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
No problem. But yeah, it takes a lot of times, a lot of touch points, a lot of face time with landlords for that trust. And I think also what was important is that me in at the city, I had a landlord tenant officer that was helpful as well. So what information I could not provide, they had this resource that could just walk them through the different services and supports that were available.
Alrighty. Um, Anyone else want to come off mute and ask their questions? Again, don't want to miss them in the chat.
Hi, I have a question.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Imani. And Lauren, could you give any examples of the incentives that you found successful for landlords?
Yeah. So one incentive was if they were to get involved in my program, we would tout these properties as rent ready, thus giving them a stamp of approval from the city and highlighting how they whatever the criteria of the program at the time, they were able, they attended classes, they attended classes, and they went through a number of criteria. And then because they went to that criteria, they got publicity from the city, and they also got access to potential rental rehab funding as well. So they got a benefit with the marketing and the funding sources that we had available to assist them.
Thank you.
And I would say with the incentives, we do have a whole toolkit on incentives that kind of talks through as you are thinking about the incentives, what could be attractive to landlords. And we have probably about 10 city examples of how different cities have gone about incentivizing landlords to become a part of their program.
Can you explain a little bit more about what rental rehab funding consists of?
Yeah, for the most part, we were using CDBG funding, Community Development Block Grant funding from HUD, and we designed a rental rehab program that could assist these housing providers or landlords with getting their property up to date. And so, things interior, exterior, or simply put, since it's been a long time, the eligible activities that are covered under the Community Development Block Grant at the time. So that's something to look into to see if your city has a program that is either funded by the Community Development Block Grant program or if your city has funds for the preservation or rehab of funding as well. And cities that do have CDBG funding are populations over 50,000 or more should be entitlement cities. If you are a smaller city, more than likely your CDBG block grant is available through the state through a competitive process. And that is an effective tool when thinking about working with landlords, a tool to potentially tap into.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alex Rizal. I'm with Callum TA. I'm interested in terms of sort of maybe starting from scratch. If you don't know any landlords, big or small, other than, being invited to conferences, what are other good methods of trying to build a list of landlords, affect large groups? I know you mentioned the associations, but we're trying to build that list from scratch. So I'm interested in what your approaches might be towards that.
And let me ask you this question. Are you with a city government or county government?
No, it's a statewide organization operated by the Utilities Commission.
I would be curious if it's operated by the Utility Commission, what data could be found at the state level. So one of the things, what's available, water connection to see if that data is publicly available to you. That is the way to start from scratch and to look at, does the property address match the mailing address to determine if it is a landlord or a housing provider. It could be a touch point to building that list first. Another point is your local realtor chapter. How can you get in front of those realtors who are working with landlords? And considering if it's a state, there's probably a number of realtor chapters that could help to either get you in front and present to landlords or connect you with those landlords as well. I would also look at what publicly available data is available through your city's GIS system as well, or what publicly available data the city has on their website to see what's available either through their 311 or utilities as well. So there may be a number of public databases that are available where you can look at, again, the property address and the mailing address is an indicator that the property is being rented.
Thank you.
And the question about the affordability and deed restriction with landlords, there will be some landlords who are like, this program is not for me. And there will be some landlords who are definitely in need of funding. So CDBG is just one source, but again, you can consider housing trust funds, right? And it depends on the state code if a city is able to create a public housing trust funds. But if that's local, then the city can determine if the pot of money should be deed restricted or not. So there are different sources of funding that can be considered. You can also potentially work with local philanthropic organizations who may be able to create a pot of funding or match city funding to do housing repair. So looking into that, but don't let CDBG deter you because there will be those landlords who would be more than happy and who have naturally occurring affordable housing that could use that funding.
Great. We have time for one more question. Does anyone have questioned that they'd like to ask Lauren before we move on to our next activity? Or Lauren, do you want to say any comments?
Yeah, I put in the chat Tulsa, Oklahoma Gold Star Landlord Program, which was similar to a program I did in Virginia, where they talk about the incentives, how they got landlords to join in. So that's another example. That example is also highlighted in our landlord engagement toolkit as well.
Great. Thank you so much for putting that in the chat. And we'll try our best to collect anything that's shared in the chat by speakers and look through what is shared by participants and see how we can compile maybe that within a follow-up email after this call. So if folks don't get to that now. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for a wonderful presentation and for giving us so much knowledge and letting us know about all the toolkits that exists with NLC and how helpful that can be to folks' works here. So again, thank you so much for joining, and we're really excited to have you facilitate one of our peer groups next. Alrighty. And so now we'll move on to our next activity of the webinar. We have seen how lively the chat has been, so that is really wonderful to see. We created this webinar in mind, where with the goal in mind to have participants sort of engage and learn from one another as well. And so for this section of our agenda, we're hosting 3 different breakout sections where attendees can engage on a topic that they feel really passionate about. We really want to share more about their experience, or maybe ask their peers or the facilitator questions about the specific topics. So attendees can choose from 3 of the different topics that we thought would be really great to discuss as it relates to sort of this approach to engaging property owners. So the first being appealing incentives. What are some of the appealing incentives and financing offerings that folks can consider to really make that appeal and really incentivize property owners to kind of take on these energy efficiency investments. The second being effective messaging for owners. So what has worked, what has not worked, what has been effective. And then lastly, identifying and creating communication channels to reach homeowners. And that's been touched a little bit already. What are some of the best platforms, approaches to really identifying these property owners and really getting a list of where to start or maybe scale if this is something you're already doing. So like as I mentioned, part of the group discussion really is to really foster this peer-to-peer learning with folks on the call, but it also gives an opportunity for folks who maybe had a question come up during the discussion or maybe didn't get to a question here during our presentations to really ask a little bit more questions maybe to the facilitators. Okay. And so my colleague Krista will now be opening up the breakout rooms. So if you're joining us via computer, you will see a breakout rooms at the bottom of your Zoom window. It's circled here in sort of this orange square, and you click on that button and you should see then a pop-up window that will look like this. And we ask that once that pop-up window appears, to select again the breakout that is most, that you're really passionate about, that you have some experience in with your work, or are interested in asking others maybe a question or of the facilitator. So just review the options and select the breakout group that interprets or interests you the best, or aligns with your work best, and click join. So the facilitators should be in there shortly as well. My colleague Nick Roper should be in the call, so he'll sort of stay in the main room as well to help folks join groups if they have any trouble. But I'll sort of jump into my breakout room in a minute, so I'm just going to give folks a few more minutes to sort of join. But facilitators, if you can, feel free to jump into your assigned breakout group. And let me know, facilitators, if you have any trouble joining. Maybe move you there. Nick, are you on the call?
I am.
Okay, perfect. Stefan, were you gonna say something?
All right. No, I was just gonna check on Nick before I joined, okay. So I'll go ahead.
Okay, now that I know Nick is also on the call, Nick, I'm gonna go ahead and join my breakout group.
Okay.
And then just okay, perfect. And just chat me.
Sounds good. I just didn't want to interrupt you before.
No worries, no worries. And chat me if anything comes up.
Okay.
I'll probably be coming back to the main room early.
Okay.
Maybe like
I'll help get people to their rooms if they need help.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then for anyone left in the room, as my colleague said, Nick said, he'll sort of help out if you have any questions. Okay.
I'm not sure if the slide is still going to maintain while Roxy's up. Okay, so let me really quickly share my screen.
And Nick, I'm gonna join my room, but feel
Yep.
free to Teams me if you have any questions or anything.
Yeah, Krista, just a heads up, you will need to come back slightly early to close the breakout rooms.
Okay, that sounds right. Okay, sounds good. Are you a co-host also? Okay.
I should be, I think so.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'll see you.
Let's go here. Okay. Okay. I think everyone is seeing the screen instructions. Is there anyone that needs help going to a specific room? For those that have maybe just joined, we are currently in breakout groups, and we have 3 breakout rooms. Each topic is assigned where attendees can engage with other audience members and an expert. Attendees can choose from one of 3 breakout rooms.
Yeah,
Nicole, I see.
see the. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, no, go ahead.
I didn't. I don't see the option on my screen, and I would like to go into. I think it's on managing.
Okay.
Messaging.
Let me.
Is that the second one?
Let me just get you. Let me find you and then get you in there. You wanted to join which one?
I think it's messaging.
Okay. You should have gotten an invitation to do that now. Is there anyone else who would like assistance being sent to a room? I can send you an invitation to send one. Just let me know which one you want to go to.
I'd like to go to messaging, the second group.
Okay, one second.
Do it on my screen.
Yeah. So the messaging one. Okay, got you. There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, the same here.
Terry, okay, one moment, please. There we go. And let's see, there's some in the chat. Let me pull up the chat real quick. Sorry. Imoni, sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. It's Imani.
Imani, okay. Messaging. Oh, sorry. Incentives. My bad.
It's okay.
Let me find you again. Okay. And you want to go to incentives. Okay. Incentives. You'd like to go to incentives. Let's see. Let me just find you real quick. There we go. There you go. Anyone else who I can help navigate to a room? Not hearing from anyone. We have 17 people. Okay. I should have at this point sent an invite out to everyone. Feel free to accept it if you would like, or if not, you can just stay in this room, and that is okay as well. I believe everyone should be returning by about 2:20 p.m. Hi, Sebastian. I see you may have just joined. We're currently in breakout rooms. We have 3 options. I think my screen should be sharing a tab that contains those options. Is there one of those that interests you? I can send you an invitation to go to one, or I can just send you off to one as well.
I think incentives would be best for me.
Okay, we should be returning in about 10 minutes, but feel free to join in there.
Thank you.
And if at any point anyone wants to go to a breakout room, just let me know. Folks should be coming back in about 5 minutes, I believe. Hi there, we're currently in breakout rooms, but they should be coming back pretty shortly. You're welcome to join one if you'd like. The instructions are up on the screen right now, or I'm also happy to send you off to one if you need help. I was just saying that because I saw that Albrecht, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, joined. Hi, Brooke. Thanks for joining. We're currently in breakout rooms until 2:30 p.m., I believe. But the instructions are up on my screen if you want to join it yourself, or I can help you get to one.
Awesome. Thank you. I see it.
Hi, Jennifer. We're currently in breakout rooms, but there's instructions up on my screen if you want to join one. We're in them until 2:30 p.m. But you're welcome to join one, or I can help you join one if you need. Or you're also welcome to hang out here.
Thanks. I think I'll just hang out here.
Sounds good. Are you back, Krista?
Yeah, Nick, I'm back.
I'll stop sharing then. I think you should have host and everything like that, correct?
I should have.
You're the host now and everything, right?
Yes. Yes.
Fantastic. I will go ahead and leave and let you have at it then.
All right. I hope this wasn't. Thanks so much. Like me and Roxy were talking this over, trying to figure out how this was going to work. But I'm glad you were able to tap in.
There's a couple people here that just hung out in the main room, but other than that, everyone is still in breakout rooms. So good luck with the rest of the webinar.
Thanks. All right. Have a great rest of your day.
You
too.
I understand that you're going to be providing the slides after this program.
Yes, so we'll be providing y'all with the slides. There's also a recording at the end.
Okay, great. I unfortunately have to leave. Sorry about that. So
No
I'll look for
problem.
that. I'll look for that information. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks for coming.
Alrighty, folks. Hopefully, y'all had really interactive discussions, just like I did in my group chat, or excuse me, my group in my breakout group. We almost forgot it was time, but I'm gonna reshare my screen with folks. So just give me a second. Okay. And as I'm flipping through these slides, there was a comment if notes from the breakout groups would be shared after the call. So I'm going to compile the notes and see what's the best way to share that information out with folks, if links or suggestions or best practices were shared. So it might happen in the next 2-3 days where we share these items, but just wanted to make a note of that because I thought that was a great question. Alrighty. So now coming towards the end of our webinar here, I want to introduce our last speaker of this call. So I want to invite Joe to come, I guess, on and yeah, feel free to start when you're ready.
All right. Yeah, thanks everyone for having me, and thanks for those of y'all who stuck around through everything. My name is Joe Lang. I'm a senior energy analyst, and I work for the City of Ann Arbor's Office of Sustainability Innovations, where we have recently passed a new green rental housing program that deals with energy efficiency and rental housing. So here to talk to you a little bit about that process today. If we can go to the next slide. I am just kind of broadly going to go through some of the context for why this is something that we are pursuing, give just an incredibly high level overview of the ordinance itself, what it took to get there, and kind of what it is in place before talking about some of the engagement takeaways we have with landlords. I'll note there's no way I will get to everything within all of this, so I'm more than happy to take questions at the end as well as to follow up with anyone about this. So next slide, please. Everything we do here at Ann Arbor is based off of our A20 plan, which is our community's plan for equitably achieving carbon neutrality by the year 2030. This was unanimously adopted by our city council back in 2020, although there was a lot of work that happened pre-existing this plan. It is really what has continued to drive our work forward as it relates to climate change and climate preparedness. On the next slide, there's so many things that are in this plan that, again, I will in no way be able to touch on or even mention all of them. But one of the key ones for our purposes here today is to establish a green rental housing program with the core metric of that is reducing energy usage in rental properties. We do have other programs that are in place for addressing other segments of our building and housing stock, but this one is specifically on our rental housing. So if we go to the next slide, the core goal of this program is to really set a minimum baseline for health, comfort, and energy efficiency in rental units as we all work towards our carbon neutrality goals. And we want to make sure we're doing it in a way that's as simple and flexible as possible, because we know that there's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot going on in rental housing, and there's a lot of different scenarios. And so we want to make sure we're accounting for that and doing it in a way that is effective and worthwhile and able to be done by the people going through the process. Likewise, we didn't just want to come out and just have a big stick and make people do everything, but rather, as we do that, have resources that are out there to help for those who might need to make any improvements in a way where they can save money, they can simplify their planning, and make compliance easy. And notably, because we know that, again, the target group who is going to be working through this is landlords, we wanted to make sure there are benefits to landlords as well in this process, because a lot of it might, again, seem like a big stick. Doing this in a way that we can make sure we have tenants who are satisfied for those reasons above, which can help them better retain tenants, which is a big thing that they're focused on, and increase their outreach to things like online reviews and marketing that they can utilize as part of this. So next slide, please. The way that we developed this program, again, very high level, is taking local data and combining that with national information. So we started off by creating a task force that was comprised of folks that were tenants, landlords, landlord advocacy groups, low-income housing developers, our building department, architects, engineers, all that good stuff, for getting people of different landlord sizes, where some had one property, some had hundreds of properties. And so that way we could really get together and figure out what our landscape looks like, look what else is out there, and then bring that all together. So during that group, we saw different presentations from folks like RMI, USDN, ACEEE was present as part of some of that. And then taking all that information, our landlord or our task force was able to see what are those opportunities that were presented, what is out there, what's possible, and then also acknowledge the challenges that we face here in Ann Arbor with some of those things. Notably in Ann Arbor, and in Michigan in general, we are overseen by the state. The state sets the building code. We as a local government cannot go above and beyond that building code. So that's one of the really big things that we had to focus on as we went. And taking all that information, the task force developed a set of recommendations that we used to ultimately guide the policy. And at the time, we had a bunch of public feedback by going out and seeing to our different city council commissions. So we had some public forums. We had a big public survey we got hundreds of responses on, and then we were able to take all that information and update it into what ultimately became the policy. And so on the next slide, please. What this ended up being is a set of energy efficiency requirements for rentals that they can go through one of two ways that I'll touch on in just a second. Importantly, going back to earlier, it gives choice and flexibility. It is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It is not a you must do X. Rather, there's a bunch of options within there, and it's baked into our existing rental inspection process. So that way it's more streamlined. It's in something that's familiar, even though it's something new, rather than an entirely brand new system and process. So next slide, please. What this ultimately looks like is like I said, there's two different pathways. The first is what we call the Home Energy Rating System, or HERS pathway. If you're familiar with this system, it uses the HERS assessment, the HERS index, where they have to go out, they work with a certified HERS assessor, and they go through, they get their HERS assessment, and they need to get a minimum score. The alternate pathway is a checklist, which is more of a prescriptive approach. To do this, we worked with a group called Elevate, who really helped us create this checklist in the form of where there's a bunch of different items that are on the checklist. To the extent we could, we looked at what their relative impact was on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and then assigned points based off of that, as well as just kind of having a standard for general sustainability items. And same kind of deal where they would have to go through, they pick the different items that they're working on, they add up their points, and they need to get to a minimum score on there. So next slide, please. The way that this all works is, it's like I said, it's built into our existing rental inspection process. Here in Ann Arbor, we have rental inspections take place every 2.5 years. If they pass with no issues on the first try, it's a 3.5-year cycle. And so when they go to do this, they'll have to meet these green rental housing requirements as well. To ease the burden on our inspectors, we're doing this all virtually. So they need to upload their documentation into our system, and we review it from there. So for the HERS report, they just attach that. It's good to go if they meet the score. For the checklist, they have to demonstrate the items that they are choosing, and then they have to upload documentation showing that they, in fact, have done those items. And then we review that on our end from there. So next slide, please. So now just going into some of the lessons, like I said, very high level from all of that. Happy to touch more on it if folks have questions either here or offline. But in terms of lessons, it's important to know that every landlord and property is unique and different landlords need different things. And I put that little asterisk there because some buildings are almost exactly the same. Some houses are almost exactly the same. But every landlord you talk to, there's going to be something different. They're going to have some different needs, some different weird quirks, some different my house has randomly 4 additions added onto it. There's always something that's weird and different. And you need to be aware of that as you're approaching these kind of conversations. Because one, you cannot make a program that is one size fits all, and you can't have a conversation that's one size fits all. There's always going to be something different, and you need to be thinking about that. So on the next slide, I'm just going to talk a little bit about how you can see how different some of our properties are. This is looking at rental units owned by owners. So this is like not properties, but units. So for instance, this could be someone who owns a house and they rent out their basement apartment, and that would be 1 unit. So you can see about 10% of our rental units are owned by one owner. They only own that 1 unit. And then we have some that own 954 units. Those are very different situations. Those are very different landlords. Those are very different situations that they're in. And so it's important to think about this program with that in mind, having that flexibility and having things that work for both that one person and that group that owns all of those units. Similarly, on the next slide, this is kind of the same deal, but it's just number of properties owned by owners. One property can have multiple units. But you can see that over half of our rentals are owned by one person who owns just one property. This can be, someone who had a house, they're retiring, they're moving into a condo, and they're renting out their old house. Another common-ish one is people buy a house for their student when they go there, and then they afterwards turn it into a rental. So you can see we have a lot of those, but then we also, again, have some owners who own over 400 properties. Again, very different situation, very different setup, very different infrastructure for those folks. And so again, it's just important to be thinking about this when you're creating a program like this and when you're doing engagement, because while it can kind of be easier to reach those big groups, kind of like we were talking about earlier, you got to find ways to reach those individuals as well. Next slide, please. The biggest takeaway I can give, and so if you only write down one sentence, write down this sentence, is trying to make your program as simple and affordable as possible. I have talked to so many landlords, and every single time the 2 things I hear is, wow, that's going to be so much work. It's going to cost so much money. I'm just going to have to raise rents. And then immediately followed, even if they don't think that's their concern, this is too much. I got to comply with this regulation, this policy, this ordinance. I got to figure this out. I can't do one more thing. That's too many things to figure out. So to the extent you can, both in your messaging and in your program development, really be thinking about simplicity and affordability in that. And so on the next slide, one of the ways we've worked to do this, it's a semi one-stop shop. I don't know if I'd fully qualify it as it, but we do have a landlord resource hub where we have a lot of different information on there. It includes links to all the different financial resources we could compile. We offer a rebate program at the City of Ann Arbor. Our utility offers a rebate program. Our utility, in conjunction with our state green bank, offers an interest rate buy down for some of these financing. And so we have all of that, and we also have local resources that can help them through this process. So everything's kind of laid out for them with both financial resources, educational resources, all this kind of stuff to help make it easier and more affordable for them. On the next slide, we also have all the information they need for the ordinance, as well as materials we've developed for them. One of the things they can do to help with their score is do renter education. And so we've developed all of that for them so they can use that and directly just apply it right to their renters, and they can get points for that to kind of help simple, and it helps the renters as well. We also have guidance on the checklist itself. We have a big document that contains every single item on there, what it is, how to do it, and how to get help with those items. On the next slide, is our next lesson, which is meeting folks where they are at and often, acknowledging you'll never be able to do enough because we have 8,500 properties. There's no way I can talk to 8,500 people, but you need to kind of have these conversations. Like we were talking about earlier, going to where they are is helpful, and then having these one-on-one conversations makes a big difference. If you can go to the next slide, kind of touched on earlier, so I can go a little quickly through it, but the most relevant organizations to us is we have a local apartment association. I've talked to them so many times. In 2 months, going out, we're having a workshop with them to go through everything. We are in no way best friends, but we have a solid working relationship, and that has helped me be able to talk to more folks. Like someone mentioned earlier, Regional Realtor Association was a really big one that we worked with early on and continue to. A lot of real estate agents own their own rental properties or manage them for people. So that's a really good one that I didn't originally consider, but realized throughout the process was a big deal. And similarly, there's property management groups where they might, they might run, there might be an owner for a bunch of different owners, but they organize it for them. And then also, as not fun as it is, one-on-one meetings are huge. No matter how much information you put out there, no matter how clear it is, not everyone's going to understand it. Just this week, I've had 7 or 8 different calls with people who are asking for an exemption. After talking for 20 minutes, like, oh, I'm already compliant. I just didn't realize it. So being able to have that and walk through that is really important. I'll always note a caveat for safety. A lot of people want you to come out and talk to them in person. Try to bring a second person with you just to be safe. Next slide. The other one more lesson is consider renter behavior. This is not the biggest impact when we talk about the energy efficiency. If you live in an inefficient unit, it does not matter how efficient you are being, you're still in an inefficient unit. But I mentioned my top 2 things I hear from landlords. This is the third thing I hear from a landlord is, well, my tenants leave their windows open all winter. Well, they have the lights on all the time. They never turn their oven off, whatever. And so this is a real concern for landlords. And so you want to make sure you are addressing that. And then likewise, renters are a big part of our community. They care about energy efficiency, and programs aren't always targeted to them. So you want to make sure you're addressing them as well. So next slide. What we have done is we have a lot of different renter education materials. We have a website for them. We have a sustainability session for them. That's a webinar they can view. And so making sure we're including them so they are aware of what they're able to do and help them grow over time to be able, when they might be able to do some more impactful things. And then my last slide before going over to questions, I just want to note, you really want to, at the outset, be thinking of all of your different messaging. You want to sit down, take some time to think, create talking points, fact sheets, FAQs, whatever it is. And then you want to use that, share that with your elected representatives as well, if you're a city especially, and then keep this messaging consistent everywhere you go. You kind of saw mine throughout. I underlined some of the key terms, but you want to make sure you're coming up with whatever this is. You're hammering those points in everything you do, your website, your presentations, your press releases, your social media, whatever. And then also making sure to get this in the hands of other people who do communication. Plenty of landlords didn't call me to ask questions. They called their council member to ask questions. And so by them having this type of information, they could just answer those questions. They didn't have to send them to me, get lost in whatever, or they trust their council member more because they know them more. Or they used this during their discussion when they were voting on the ordinance itself. So making sure to do this, be consistent, and then get it in the hands of other people who have these types of conversations was really crucial for us to get this passed. So with that was, like I said, very high level for all these things. More than happy to, we got questions. I've seen some come in the chat, but also happy to follow up individually, especially if folks want to know more about the ordinance itself, how we got there, because that could be a whole several hours long conversation with all the war stories from that. So thanks, and happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Joe, for a wonderful presentation and sharing more about the City of Ann Arbor's approach to engaging landlords through your policy. I do see one question immediately, but again, folks, if you guys want to come off mute and share your questions to Joe directly, please feel free to do so I don't miss your question in the chat. The question I see here is, this might have been at the beginning of your presentation, but someone is curious to know about how did you collect the data about the types of rentals owned? Oh, yeah. Maybe towards the end, sorry.
Yep. Slightly messily, but our city assessors data, it was in there. We were able to pull it. It's kind of a mismatch between what they have and then also what our rental housing permits have as well, because they kind of monitor this in some areas, but they both monitor it differently. So we kind of had to mix and match some of it. But easiest answer, our city assessor, whenever a property goes up and when it's rented, and we can go from there and then pull permits from our rental housing team.
Great. Does anyone have any questions that they want to come off mute and ask Joe or put in the chat? Okay. Do you want to put your question in the chat, audio, and I'll.
Oh, I don't know. It happened right now. It
Okay,
was saying that the host was not allowing me to
oh, I'm
unmute.
sorry about that. Glad
Yeah,
you were
no
able to.
worries. Quick question. Yeah, I guess twofold question. One of them is, what have you found to be the most effective channels, right, to get this message across, to irrigate this message among different this different segmentation of landlords, right? And I'm wondering as well if you have found any value in, I don't know if you have created any videos, but any testimonials, right, that are short, punchy, etc., that kind of convey the story of what are the benefits for both the landlord and the tenants.
Yeah. Yeah. Starting with that one, we're fortunate. We have a communications coordinator who's really into Instagram Reels recently. And so we've been using those a good bit to kind of get stuff out there and use it. It was especially helpful early on as we were coming to coming towards passage, where we are our realtor association put forth $100,000 plus ad campaign against this program. And so what we did was we used that and we used what they were saying and we just made like a series of fact or fiction reels basically that just said like, hey, here's what they're saying. Here's the reality. This is what's actually happening. This is what's actually in the ordinance. And that was something that was pretty helpful. And then sorry, I forgot what your first part of the question was.
Yeah, the first question was that it was about what have you found to be the best channels, right?
Yes.
And then if you had found any use in testimonials, right, and specifically in videos, right, that again convene this message of the impacts on the landlord and the tenant.
Yeah, I think one, and I'll certainly caveat this. I know this isn't the most possible for everyone, but yeah, I mean, one, we have an ordinance, so the ordinance is there, and they're required to deal with it in some way. So this naturally comes up, but that's not a good answer because that's not useful for everyone. But what is actually useful is trying to find those local brokers to the extent you can. Like I said, the apartment association, the realtor association, kind of building off of them, using groups from there because then you engage with more people. And then also snail mail. We sent out a few rounds of postcards around when this had passed and then when it was getting ready to be implemented, because essentially everybody gets them in some way. We have, like I said, our rental housing, they have to have their registration of where their business is. So even if they own the house but they don't live in the house, we were able to send out postage to everyone so that regardless, they were able to find that one way or the other. And then another effective form is we have obviously most landlords do not love this program, but there's been some who've been enthusiastic and they've been helpful throughout and being able to work with them, run through this with them, doing examples of it with them, and then they are able to then go and share their testimonial of how it's worked for them, how it's not as bad as people think, has been helpful. Then they're able to kind of help people from there. Then I do see that question in the chat from Felix asking about reaching out to property management companies and how it differs from landlords or realtors. And the answer is it doesn't super differ all that much. You're kind of going through the same channels. Most of them, we kind of found through those existing channels, but you can also kind of see it as like you're just driving or walking around the city. You'll see like a lot of for lease signs with the same company over and over again. Just for instance, one of ours, it's like they manage a lot of single family properties. Again, there's like someone who owns that property, but then they contract with that property management company who actually operates and runs it for them. And so, just the way I guess that you'd say it differs is, you're just going out and you're getting that information to them because that way it just feeds to all those other owners and operation. But again, you're kind of reaching them the same way outside of drive around town and see like, wow, I'm seeing a lot of, flyers under XYZ company now leasing. And so that's kind of the difference of it. I do see one from Tom saying, do we monitor multifamily building owner compliance with building energy usage intensity and decarbonization ordinance or goals? If so, how? Kind of two different ways. One, we do have a benchmarking ordinance for our buildings that are 20,000 square feet or greater. They're required to report their energy and water usage every year. And so that's the way that we track that one. As for, kind of the smaller multifamily properties, as we are now going, it is through green rental housing. They need to go through this process every inspection cycle, so every 2.5 years, every 3.5 years, and so every time they come in through that inspection cycle, we'll be able to look through it and track from there. And then on the broadest scale, we do a greenhouse gas inventory every year, so we see some of those broad pictures as well.
Great. Thank you, Joe, for answering all the questions. We do have a few minutes for 2 more questions. So if folks were inspired to ask a question based on what they've heard so far, or have a lingering question about the content that was presented, feel free to come off mute or put it in the chat as well, and I can relay those questions to Joe.
Joe, are you able to use something like what realtors use in terms of like when they have sales comparables where they have a client that wants to put their house on the market and the real estate agent gives them comparables of other properties that have sold in the area so they can kind of have an idea of how to price their property? Do you do like comparables of other landlords that have similar properties as the one that you're targeting and show what the cost savings and energy has been for similar properties in the area?
Yeah, we're working to do that. There's some that have gone through the process, and so we've been able to use that. Similarly, we early on when we were kind of testing everything out, when we were using the HERS pathway, one of the things you can do with a HERS report when you get it, you can also play around with it after, where you can go like, oh, if I change this input, what would my score have been? And since the HERS report kind of spits out estimated energy costs, it can give you an estimated energy savings as well. So that's something we were able to do with some of them. Now that one's not, quite as one-to-one of they for sure would have seen these savings, but being able to go, since we tested at a couple different building sizes and such, and being like, oh, look, if you had done insulation air sealing, tenants could have saved, it's tenants obviously, but tenants could have saved $1,200 a year on their utility costs. And so things like that were definitely helpful. And that's a thing we're working to build up now as this, because this ordinance just went into effect in the beginning of January. So, some people have been doing changes, but we're at the very beginning of it. But we are actively trying to collect stories and samples of what others have done to be able to do that. Like I mentioned, we did have one landlord who's been really friendly to us all throughout. He's been doing a lot of these changes anyway before the ordinance itself, and he tracks all of his data, and we've been able to use it. And being able to share that with others has been really helpful.
Thank you.
Would love to have more as we go.
Great. So we have maybe time for one quick question. I know I saw in the chat maybe a question around how to just generally get people on board, specifically landlords. I know in this case, property managers by law probably have to do it. So, I guess that's one way to get them on board. But anyone else have just one last quick question for Joe before we close out? Cool. Not hearing any. But again, thank you so much, Joe, for this wonderful presentation and for sharing about the process that Ann Arbor has gone through. Yes, so I will get to that question in the chat, but thank you so much for taking the time to join us and sharing more about the process. Alrighty, folks. So with the last few minutes remaining, again, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. We hope that this webinar was informative and or that you have walked away with learning something new or learning about the ways in which you can expand or scale your work. The recording of this presentation will be shared to all those who registered. So essentially, if you're in the Zoom, you have been registered, so you should receive an email. We will also share the PowerPoint presentations as well, and then we will find a way to potentially share the breakout group notes as well with any information that was shared there. And then, of course, the chat, anything that was shared in the chat, whether that from our speakers, we'll also make sure to include that, whether that is in the slide for the presentation slide or as a supplemental document. But once again, I want to thank all the presenters and facilitators for this webinar, for taking the time to join us and share your knowledge and expertise and time. We are incredibly grateful for y'all's time and expertise. And if anyone here as an attendee have any questions that we didn't get to today or have any questions just in general, feel free to contact us, the local policy team at ACEEE, using the email you see on the screen. And with that, I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. If you're on the East Coast, hope you're staying warm. But yeah, have a great rest of your day, everyone.